Must one honor an abusive parent? While fully aware of the corrosive and negative effects an abuse by a parent takes, rabbinic literature still encourages the expression of respect and honor for such parents. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you is not my own words. It is an incredible article written by Rabbi Peretz Rodman under the same title under myjewishlearning.com. An incredible article that I recommend you read. And borrowing from his teaching on My Jewish Learning, there's a couple of things we need to take a look at when we're talking about honoring our parents. We all have parents that sometimes can be abusive, not only mentally, psychologically, with their attitude, but also even physically, or even, God forbid, even sexually. So what do we do? How and must we honor an abusive parent? There's also other areas we're going to be covering, like don't strike your parents, all Torah commandments, don't curse your parents. You're not even supposed to go to secular court to inform on your parents. There's also an area of Jewish law that talks about don't testify against your parents or relatives. So we learn truly that when the principles that we hold true come into conflict with one another, such is the case with a son or daughter who must determine how to relate to an abusive parent. The Torah requires that we honor our parents. But is this commandment extended to the parents who have been physically, sexually, emotionally, verbally abusive? The Jewish tradition puts great emphasis on the honor of a child should show to his parents. And it goes beyond the general exhortation of the Ten Commandments. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long on the soil that the Lord your God has given you. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Rabbinic law and legend and medieval and modern ethical tracts give specific guidelines for the ways in which we are to honor our parents is translated into concrete action and prohibition. On the other hand, we find that the Jewish people are exhorted by the Torah, are commanded by the Torah, and you shall be very watchful of yourselves. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 15, which is understood in the classical biblical interpretation to be a call to guard one's own health and well-being. When working with children of abusive parents, mental health professionals urge children to make a careful separation from abusive parents for the sake of self-preservation. Now, how then does one obey both imperatives, both commandments? To what extent and to what ways should a child show respect to such a parent? Even if a son or daughter does choose to fulfill the biblical commandments, can it be done in a way that one does not expose him or her to further damage? Parents are warned in all cases. Rabbinical literature is full of potential for abuse of parental power. There are many passages in which parents are warned of the ill effects of physical and emotional abuse. We have read in the Talmud, for example, in Gittin, chapter 6, chapter 6b, Rabbi Hizda said a man should never impose excessive, let me repeat that again, excessive fear upon his household, or else he may cause great tragedy. Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rav, if a man imposes fear upon his household, he will eventually commit 3 sins of illicit sexual relationship, bloodshed, and desecration of the Sabbath, meaning his wife will not observe the laws of ritual purity because she'll be afraid to tell her husband that she is not yet allowed to have a relationship with him. And members of the family will meet with disastrous fate after running away from home. And the household will relight a lamp on the Sabbath for fear of his anger being in the darkness. So this is the reason why we have to take special care. Another instructive Talmudic tale or legend or story is found in Moed Katan 17a. A domestic servant of a prominent sage saw a man beating his grown-up son, and displaying rabbinic wisdom she had picked up in the rabbi's household, said, "Let the man be put under a ban, for he transgressed the admonition of the Torah. Before the blind you shall not place a stumbling block," it says in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14. Her concern was that by striking his son, he was, even if inadvertently, goading the son into striking his father, an offense which with dire consequences in biblical law. And by the way, there are 4 areas in which we are concerned in regards to honoring our parents. Number one, we're not supposed to strike one's parent. We're not supposed to curse one's parent. We're not supposed to go to the secular courts to inform or to bring them to secular prison. And we're not to testify against them in any public court. It's an area of refusal of being incriminated or self-incrimination or incriminating even one's parent. A more shocking report of child abuse is in Talmudic literature is a story in Tractate Semachot, chapter 2, about a child from Bnei Brak who was so afraid of the excessive punishment that usually was meted out by his father that he committed suicide. Clearly, the rabbis who shaped classical Judaism offered no sanction to child abuse, and rabbis of all denominations have spoken out recently in opposition of abuse of children by parents or teachers. But did the rabbis see such a behavior as sufficient to release the child from the responsibility towards the parent? No, my friends. Problematic model. While the Talmud or the Talmudic law does not directly address the questions of respecting an abusive parent, it does provide a window into rabbinic thinking through anecdotes that consistently portray an adult children showing respect for an abusive parent. Story about filial piety of non-Jews, Dama, the son of Natina, are offered by the Talmudic sages in Kedushim 31a. And what does it say? As modeled in a response of the question, how far does one honor the parents extend? And how far do we go to? In one of the anecdotes, Dama was wearing a gold embroidered silken cloth sitting among the Romans. And not only any kinds of Roman, but the Roman nobles, the hierarchy. When his mother came, she came and tore it off of him, struck him on the head, spat him in the face, and yet did not shame her. Another story told in the same direction, the discussion shows how Rabbi Torah found crouching down for his mother to use his back as a step stool to get in and out of her bed. We are told also about that they were so unimpressed, he asked, has she thrown a purse before you into the sea without shaming her? That they were telling him is the standard to which one should aspire. Honor the person or do we honor the role? Now that we see our sages of the Talmud were the issues, we are forced to ask, did they indeed expect us to follow the example of Dama ben Natina and others who have seemed to have swallowed more than just pride as they continue to offer obedience and respect to parents who mistreated them? Many times you've heard of stories of even mothers who slap their adult children. What, do we go back and strike them back? Well, obviously, biblically, no. And not only that, we're to respect them and give them honor. Two reasons may be given. First, it's possible to understand that the parents in those tales are mentally unstable, deranged parents, like any mentally ill person, or the person is basically so inebriated or drunk that he's literally out of his or her mind and cannot be held accountable, according to Torah law, for their actions, and they still deserve the care and tolerance that a parent requires. The pain that they inflict must be seen as unintentional, out of their own mind, as it were, not normal. Another unrelated understanding of those tales is this one, that one honors one's parent for being a parent, and not for how well or how poorly that parent has lived up to the demands of their role. If the child of an abusive parent lives up to the Jewish society's expectation of proper filial respect despite the emotional difficulty he's involved in, or he or she makes a powerful statement about the role of parenthood, one made all the more salient by the knowledge of friends and relatives that the relationship was a strained or even a severed one, whether by refraining from public response of anger or taking a positive step, including observing mourning practices and reciting Kaddish after a parent has died. An individual who incurred emotional or physical harm at the hand of a parent can still affirm the importance of parenthood itself, even when rejecting his or her particular parent as a model for how that role should be fulfilled. There are two types of evil. Now, interesting enough, Rabbi Rodman makes mention of a book by Rabbi Michael Gold, who looks at how the Talmudic authorities deal with a difficult question in his book, God Loves Sex and Family. He cites a passage of the Gemara about a problem of a property stolen by a parent and passed on a child through inheritance, and it must be returned by their own, or do they? That deepens on the parent, if he has repented of his crime, that the children must return the property as an act of respect to the parent. The clear implication, writes Rabbi Gold, is that the father did not repent but remained a wicked man, and the children do not need to honor him. Nevertheless, in practice, most post-Talmudic halakhic authority has tended to agree with this implied conclusion, but not the medieval commentator, philosopher, and codifier Maimonides, the Rambam. Rambam views even unrepentant parent is still due honor and reference, in which I would agree with Rambam. Yechiel Michael Halevi Epstein, of the 19th century author of the Aruch HaShulchan, offers an insight of Maimonides' difficult opinion. He suggests that Maimonides called for honoring a parent who has lost control of his appetite, but not one whose actions are intentionally harmful. The latter is an evil person, not worthy of being shown respect by his children. In such a case, a son or daughter may or should refrain from honoring a parent if doing so will destroy his own or her own self-esteem, writes Gold. Professional therapy is advised, and it may be necessary to separate from the parent for a time, perhaps even for a number of years. Ultimately, one may reach accommodation with a parent who has abusive, or perhaps even forgive the parent, but it should not be at the cost of ruin the self-esteem. Other issues that we're going to be talking about in this series is going to be the areas of honoring one's parent when it has to do with not testifying against one's parent before secular court, or even the aspect of Mesiris, which is a calling on the authorities to take him or her to jail for the abuse, which can convert easily as a rodef. So we will not end with the subject at here, but we'll continue in other videos. Shalom, shalom.